Swimming like a shark in a shrimp tank. Big fish, small pond in the shrimp tank.
Hello and welcome to the video wrap-up show for the Shrimp Tank podcast here in Seattle. I'm Dan Whedon, and I'm joined today by my co-host, Linda Popke. Linda and I just had a fascinating and fun conversation with our guest, Jenn LeBlanc. You're going to want to listen to the entire podcast. To do so, you can subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. We're ubiquitous. We're all over the place. You can also find every episode that we've done for the past 6+ years on our website at shrimptankpodcast.com/Seattle.
Hey, so I want to talk, Jenn, you spent so much time telling us such great information. But one of the things that struck with me is how female founders are so much less likely to be able to get funded through venture capitalists, and particularly if they're founders, women of color. So why is this happening and what can they do to get around it?
So why is it happening? I think a lot of it is just unconscious bias. I don't think anybody means to do this. I think everybody wants to do the right thing. I have a fundamental belief that humans are inherently good. So I think there's two things that need to happen. We need to be educating those folks who are writing the checks. That's important, right? We need to get more women into the position of writing the checks. I recently became an LP in a VC fund that is giving money to investing in female founders at that very early stage, because that's where it's really, really difficult to get funding as a woman. But I think one of the other things, there's kind of a two-part answer to that. So solving the ecosystem challenges, right? Making sure that we're asking the same questions of founders, whether, regardless of their gender, getting more women in a position of writing checks. Changing some of those dynamics is important. But in the meantime, that's a long-term play. In the short term, women need to know, okay, what do I do now? I need to get funding from business now. And this isn't just funding from VCs, it's also funding from bankers. So, and there's other challengers, right? You might be working with a partner who's challenging you on your credibility. So all of these things come into play, whether you're seeking VC funding or you're just trying to run your business. There's always going to be challengers in your business. So how do you answer those questions? And that's one of the things that I work with them to do, because the research shows that they will raise 14 times more money if they answer the questions that may make them sort of less likely to receive funding, whether it's traditional bank funding or VC funding, into more of a promotion, vision-oriented question, that they will significantly more money. And that's, I believe knowledge is power. And so I teach that skill all the time to women, because I think if they can learn how to do this while the rest of us are trying to, change the ecosystem, they can go forward now.
So Jenn, aside from VC funding, and that was a fascinating topic that we talked about, we also discussed the small and medium-sized business owner, the CEO, the entrepreneur that is a woman. And we discussed that they have their own, they may not be looking for startup funding, but they've got some of their own challenges to deal with. Would you share what you shared on the podcast? Because I found it to be incredibly valuable.
I think that there is, first of all, I think customer revenue is the best form of funding you can possibly ever pursue. And most businesses are not VC fundable, and you don't really want it. You got a big target on your back. So I'm often, pushing women into who may be pursuing VC funding is, okay, how can we get you revenue so you have the independence to make the choices you want? VC funding may be appropriate, but right now maybe it isn't, right? So a lot of businesses, most businesses, are customer revenue growth businesses. So even in those situations, there's things that can be done. So I think from a customer perspective, focusing on your customer journey, I think we talked a little bit about, even if you've done that work before, you may want to redo it, because a lot of us have changed a lot of things about our lives in the last 2 years. And so the assumptions you have about your customers and their experiences and their beliefs may have changed. And so I think it's always worth going back, always come back to the customer. And then sometimes you need a line of credit. You need a loan to make an investment for something. The research shows that women tend to receive funding less often and lower amounts of funding. And I had a conversation with a banker a couple of years ago, and a big light bulb went off. So when women present, so typically men will present a budget and it'll be, this hockey stick, right? It's fantastic, roses, rainbows, unicorns everywhere. And then women present realistic budgets that they can achieve. So what happens is you put those two budgets in. Underwriter knocks 30% off every budget because they're used to dealing with male budgets that are ridiculous. So they cut 30% off the top. But business is still reasonable and funded. Female business came in at 50% of that revenue, gets 30% cut off. It's not a viable business. And I'm like, oh my goodness. I just figured out why women are not getting the bank loans and the lines of credit. It's because of the assumptions that get made again about what their financial projections look like and how women tend to do much more realistic and achievable budgets than male owners do. And that's just the reality of it. So again, knowledge is power. Knowing that, how can you create a budget that looks more like what they expect so that when they knock off 30% off the top, 20 or 30%, you still seem like a viable business.
Because in the end, it's about getting the money.
Yes.
Yep.
Because you know what your business needs. And the research also shows that women tend to create businesses that hire employees, that better their communities, that better the environment around them, right? So you can't do that if you don't have a line of credit because you've got to pay for inventory and you're not going to get paid for that for 6 months because the product needs to flow through you, right? So money matters. It matters.
Wow. Money matters and knowledge is absolutely important here. And so if you want to find out more about this, listen to the entire podcast. But if you want to find out more from our wonderful guest, Jenn LeBlanc, thank you for being here. Where would people go to find out more about you and what you're doing?
So if they want to learn more about the work that we do with female founders, whether it's entrepreneurs or founders, whether you're doing customer revenue or VC funding, changingtidesmovement.com is the best place to find that information. And if you want to talk about launching your business and making sure it's successful and getting that $2 billion of new revenue, then ThinkResults Marketing is the place to find that information. You can find me either place.
Okay. And if you want to find out all the great things that we've been saying and finding out when each of these weekly episodes on the Shrimp Tank Seattle, you want to go to shrimptankpodcast.com/Seattle, wherever you get your podcast, iHeart, Apple, Google, Spotify, Stitcher, SoundCloud, because we are, Dan?
Ubiquitous.
And check us out on our show's social media pages, YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram.
Well, Jenn, thank you for being our guest. Linda, as always, thanks for co-hosting. Everyone, please join us every week at 12 p.m. Pacific on our Facebook page for our live stream broadcast. Our next show will be on April the 14th, where our guest will be Bill McPherson from Postnet. Please join us. Until we see you again, please be healthy, be prosperous, and have fun. Because for right now, the shrimp is back in the tank. So long.
I've been feeling like a shark in a shrimp tank. Big fish, small pond in the shrimp tank.